The comments and statements made within the show are the opinions of the commentators and their guests, have not been evaluated by the FDA, and are in no way attempt to diagnose, treat, mitigate, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. The contents of this show are not to be construed as medical advice. If you have a health condition or health concern, please contact a licensed, qualified healthcare practitioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom, and this is a Supplement Super Sleuth.
That'll be me, and the herbal storyteller.
And that definitely would be me. And together, we're going to take a peek behind the curtain of the natural products industry.
We'll be sharing naturals in the news, dispelling lots of myths, interviewing key players in the industry, and highlighting our favorite herbs and supplements.
So with that, let's pull back that curtain and see what's there.
That music sounds familiar.
Hey there, Tom.
Good morning, Nancy. And a bright and happy morning it is.
Well, where you
Like
are,
I said,
not where I
that
am.
music sounds familiar. Uh-oh, it's raining?
Well, it's very overcast.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you it's bright and sunny here in California.
I'm totally, I'm jamming to this. I really love this music.
I do too.
It reminds me of
It's like,
Sunday
hey,
morning.
it must be that time again.
It
It's
is.
time for the Supplement Super Sleuth.
And the
Which
herbal
would
storyteller.
be you, and which would be me. So,
Absolutely. All right.
alrighty.
Yeah. Well, we always start with our, I know, it's such a good tune. I can't stop myself.
I know, I gotta
Anyway,
tell my feet to stop tapping.
we've had the most bizarre weather out here. I have to just say this in New England. We've had days of 25, 30 mile an hour winds, constant wind. It's May and it's like March winds in May, but even higher winds than we normally have. Literally like Midwestern winds, winds that happen across the plains, very
Blowing across
high,
the plains.
just blowing
Yeah.
in circles sometimes. And yeah, it's been bizarre. And then, today it's overcast. So I'm sort of in this very subdued mood today. Listening more than talking probably today.
Well, we've got the same thing going on here. We have wind right now. It's really nice and beautiful and calm outside and sunny and bright. And by about 3 or 4 o'clock, the wind will pick up, and it'll just by the time it gets ready to get dark, it'll be blowing like crazy.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
It's
Really?
It's
Yeah.
as if there's no weather change. None.
Well,
More
let's
the
start
same.
with our naturals in the news. So I
Exactly.
have a really
What do we
cool
got?
piece. Oh yeah, today for me, and I only have one today because we're really gonna have a special show. But today I want to talk a little bit about cranberries. Cranberries made it in the news yet again, which I think is very cool. A lot of people think of cranberries and they think of the sweet dried cranberries, and I think of cranberries because I'm from New England. I think of bogs of cranberries and fresh cranberry, and it's it's sour and astringent, and it's a very cool berry. So the news is 100 grams of cranberries a day improves cardiovascular health, study finds. This was published in Science Daily and was published March 22nd, 2022. The results of a new clinical trial involving 45 male subjects. Good subject matter since Father's Day is coming in June, and published in the Journal of Food and Function, have linked the consumption of whole cranberry, freeze-dried powder, or fresh cranberry if you would, with improved flow-mediated dilation, a key metric that's indicated in cardiovascular health. It's also indicated in erectile health as well. So we're going to talk about that today. But interesting, cranberries, which are
Only
often...
that topic should come up.
It should come up. Oh, God, Tom. Wah, wah. Anyway, cranberries, we think of cranberries for urinary tract health for women, but it's also really helpful for men too. So that's
Yep.
my
And
naturals
I've
in the
got a
news.
I got a little piece by a lady by the name of Jenny Perez, who does Food as Medicine. And this is a little piece on stinging nettles, which is a very wonderful herbal remedy that has been used by herbalists going back into literally time immemorial. I mean, it's harvested in the spring, which is, supposedly right now, although the weather doesn't attest to that. Nettles comes up in the spring, and it's the most amazing, healthy, nutrition-filled plant. But beyond that, it's been used for fiber to make rope and things like that. It's been used as wild food. It's been used as medicine. So some of the most promising areas of research that are going on right now are clinical trials. There are clinical trials going on right now around nettle aerial parts. That's the
Nice.
upper top part of the plant. And of course, you have to wear gloves
I was just going to
to
say
harvest
that.
it, because otherwise you're going to walk around with swollen hands, and you're not going to be a very happy camper. But they're doing clinical trials on using nettle aerial parts for osteoarthritis,
Nice.
and the root of nettles for lower urinary tract symptoms, including benign prostatic hyperplasia or BPH. Male problems with their prostate and getting up every time, 16 times in the middle of the night and all of those kind of things, which is very interesting because it's been used like that for literally hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years.
And,
Yeah, absolutely. And
and yet science is now researching it.
isn't that interesting? I remember in 2005, 2006, reading studies on nettles managing an inflammatory marker called 5-lipoxygenase, which there's cyclooxygenase 2, COX-2, and then there's 5-lipoxygenase. And those two have this little balancing act that they do. And very interestingly, nettles was really being looked at in vitro and in small animal trials, really does it absolutely manage 5-lipoxygenase. And now with human clinical trials, it looks that is true about nettles. What a great thing. It's such a crazy weed. Often people who hike in the mountains or backpack talk about a stinging nettle rash,
Yes.
and they're looking for dock leaves to,
And
yeah,
powder, yes.
right, to try and quell the rash. So yeah, it's super great. Anyway, that's all we have for naturals in the news. So
Yep.
we can move on
Proceed on to an interview with a guest speaker.
naturals in the know. So today we're going to do something really exciting. And so I'm going to reintroduce Tom Dadon. And I really do want people to understand that he comes by this information with years of knowledge in herbal medicine, and with supporting men and young men and old men alike in their right to live healthfully, with his travels throughout the United States, teaching and training on herbal knowledge. And so he's going to share some of his knowledge here, and we're going to talk a little bit about men's health, but more importantly, men's sexual health. And he's really going to dive into the subject matter. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to have some special slides too. So I encourage all of you to go to our YouTube channel and start to watch our vodcast. I don't know, right? This is a podcast, but now we actually have vodcasts that go with it. So we will absolutely have some slides that may be very interesting for you. And so I'm going to share that screen right now.
All right. And while you're doing that, Nan, I just want to add a little more to that. It's as she said, we're branching out. So the slides we'll get to the point where we'll have more slides than we have for this presentation, because that's what Nan and I used to do together when we worked with a supplement company, not that many years ago. And it seems to be something that we are particularly gifted to be able to do, especially Nan. She puts together these slides like an absolute, she always blows my mind. But what I want to talk about today is really interesting, because I'm not trying to get really scientific and go into the different components of the body and so on. Today, what I want to talk about is just sort of an overview, an idea of what is male health, what's men's health. In fact, even back up from that, what what is healing? What is healing, comprised of in the body? What is it that, when the body goes out of balance, how do we bring it back into balance? And does it always have to be modern allopathic, pharmaceutical medicine? My belief, and my sobriquet is the herbal storyteller, my nickname, and I have been immersing myself in herbs and herbal traditions for well over 50 years now. So I can actually qualify as an old man who is working on his sexual health and sexual function, just like so many other men out there. And it's important because it's an important part of a man's identity. However, I have a point of view, and we're going to talk my point of view today, because I have a point of view that men tend to think that that's one of the main parts of their identity is their sexuality, and we kind of tend to get sidetracked, and we kind of forget that there are so many other dimensions that we have. So what does it look like, and what can we do about it? Well, as an herbalist, I like to look at the herbal potential of what herbs are out there that can be used to help our bodies function the way they should. And this doesn't have to be a discussion that's limited only to men. If you're a woman who has a man in her life that she wants to keep healthy and keep active and functional as long as possible,
Yes.
A lot of this is going to pertain to that. But it's going to go down roads that maybe we would look at and say, well, I didn't think it was going to go that way.
Nobody does.
Yeah, nobody does. But it's one
I'll
of those
never
things
age. We have a Peter Pan issue here in the United States, I think. That's
well,
not going to be me.
Not only do we have a Peter Pan issue, but actually, it's one of the things. There's a story in India about a great spiritual devotee, and he's asked, what's the most amazing thing that you've ever seen in the world? And his name is Prahlad Maharaj. He's associated with an incarnation of Vishnu called Nrsimhadev, and he says the most amazing thing that I've ever seen and ever heard is that nobody thinks they're going to die.
I know.
Everybody thinks, okay, we're just going on here.
Live forever.
Yeah. So the same thing is kind of true for men's sexual function. We tend to think, okay, it's just going to be great, and there's not going to be an aging process to it, and that's totally wrong. I know that Nan has people who come to her in a clinic, talking about, hey, Nan, things are not working the way they used to work.
Right.
Fix it.
Yeah.
And
Is there an herb for that? That's
yeah, right.
that's the discussion. A text. Hey Nan, is there an herb for that? No, not one.
And can I fix it? Can I fix it?
Can you fix it? It's like, okay, but it's not.
More than
right.
that. How quickly can you fix it?
Right. And
See,
I'm not a fairy godmother with a magic wand, but it takes effort.
And that's a point of view that I really want to talk about. As men, we tend to think that our bodies, women, you have cycles. Every month you have a cycle. You get intimately in touch with your body because you have to. Your physiology just literally demands it.
Yeah.
And with a man, we don't have those very obvious cycles. We have cycles, and if we really paid attention, we would probably realize, wow, I have a very definite cycle. But we don't. We tend to be very outward. We're doing. Right. And because of that, we have developed this sort of an idea that, our body's going to fix itself. Literally, when we're kids, we're out running around and we're doing, and we get a boo-boo, we get an injury, and we're like, oh, well, what the hell?
Yeah.
And we keep going, or unless it's like really bad.
A finger hanging off. I'm still in the game.
Like, I'm bleeding to death, but wait a minute, let me just tie this off, I'll be back. So we tend to try and, fix it all ourselves, and that's great. But one of the problems there is that the idea that, okay, it's going to get better on its own, and it'll heal itself, so I don't need to go have it looked at, I don't need to go get any help from anybody. And again, I think that's because we're used to looking at the results of what we're doing. We're used to making something, doing something, being something. And for women, obviously the other thing is you have babies. So when you have a baby, that's definitely, you're in
Yeah.
touch with your body, and you're in touch with another
Person's body.
living being, because you
For
have to
sure.
take care of that.
Yeah, it's a part of
So
us. And I loved
I
what
think that,
what you've been saying, about men are designed to go out and hunt and fight, I think you were talking
yeah,
about that in the book,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that there's a really great book. There's a wonderful herbalist by the name of James Green, and Nan's got a picture of the book on the slide. And James has written a book called The Male Herbal. It was one of the first herbal books that was really, dedicated towards,
Amazing.
Especially Western herbal tradition. And he has a wonderful point of view, and I just absolutely love it. If he ever sees this podcast, thank you, James. It's been an amazing book to refer to. So for so many years, he's also married to another wonderful herbalist, Mindy Green, and basically, one of the things he's talking about is that men seem to rely on heroic medicine, and the idea that, okay, quick, like Nan said, do you have an herb for that? Can you give me something quick to fix it, because I got to
Right.
get back out on the
Quick.
battlefield. It's like, yeah, I
It's
can
urgent.
not that it's too germane to the story, but I can remember playing Little League when I was a kid, and we happened to be living in France at the time, so it was like a military base, and we're on a military base, and I'm in the outfield, and somebody hits a ground ball to me, and I go to field the ground ball. It takes a bad hop, hits me right in the mouth, knocks my teeth in, and I had just gotten my braces off, and all I could think of, and I could hear my dad in the stands going, "Oh my God, his mouth!" And I literally pushed my teeth back into where they should have been, and I'm bleeding through the mouth, and the coach is like, "You want to come out?" And I'm like, "No, no, I'm okay. We can keep playing." And so that's kind of, and I think what it does, and James makes a point that, it's battlefield medicine. It's Men have been cannon fodder, literally, and we
Pretty
still
much.
are
Yeah.
cannon fodder for the ideas of people who think they want to rule the world. People who want to be in charge of everybody else, and so we have all these wars, and we're expendable. We just go out there and we're cannon fodder, and so the heroic medicine of the last 300 or 400 years has really, a lot of it has been like patch them back up and get them back out on the
Yeah,
battlefield.
yeah. Yeah.
It's really kind of cannon fodder medicine. Um, so that we can, and the same thing was true. You look at a lot of the movies that were made about the Vietnam era, and a lot of them were covering, like you think of Forrest Gump, and you think of the medics and
Yeah.
being blown apart and all this stuff. And if you were a conscientious objector, they made you a medic, so that you could still be out there helping the war effort. And because of that, we tend to, as men, we tend to look for that quick fix. And what we lose in that is an understanding of how the body actually works. So rather than just, what I wanted to do was, rather than just talk about, okay, there's this herb and there's that herb and there's this herb and there's that herb and there's
Right.
this combination,
Right.
I wanted to start out a little bit backwards and say, what is it that allows us to even be animated? What is it allows us to do things? And to do that, I want to look at some different herbal traditions. Now, obviously herbal medicine has been the medicine, and even the World Health Organization has recognized that herbal medicine is the main planetary form of
It's
medicine.
the people's
It's
medicine.
it's the people's medicine. It is accessible to everybody,
Right.
poor or not, third world or not.
Right.
There are herbal medicines out there that people are using, and
Right.
preserving those traditions is incredibly important.
Agreed.
Now, of those traditions, there are two that stand out. There are a number, but there are two that stand out, at least to the western part of the world. That's traditional Chinese medicine, which would TCM, or which more appropriately would be called traditional Chinese herbalism, and Ayurveda. And due to the influx of all of the yoga practices and so on that we have in this country, and people have become more and more aware of that Ayurvedic tradition, and more aware of the traditional
Oriental
Chinese
medicine, yeah.
medical tradition. Yeah.
And I will say that they're the oldest codified systems. There's been indigenous people medicine since the beginning of time, even prior to that. But
Absolutely.
these are codified systems with assessment, assessment, diagnostic patterns, and then protocols for certain patterns of imbalance, if you will.
Right. And there are other systems that are being codified or being looked at. I mean, there's
Yes.
literally what they call TAM, T-A-M, which
Yes.
is traditional Amazonian medicine.
Yes.
And you've got Unani Tib, which is from, the Arab countries.
Right.
And I think of Avicenna as being, an amazing physician, and compiling all of this healing literature from his day, and which was, over 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
So literally, we have these traditions, and all of these traditions basically say the same thing, which I think is germane to what we're talking about, and that is that the body begins with a certain amount of vital energy. You can call it essence, if you will. It's our essence. It's the essence of who we are, what makes us alive. Because when you look at it, it's just a bag of bones. It's a bag of bones with blood and sinew and all this other stuff, all these organ systems. But what animates it? And that's the vital essence. And we inherit that vital essence from our parents. We get, from our father's semen and our mother's ovum, depending on how they've lived, depending on their ancestors and what's been passed on, we get half of each. And then that helps us to transfer on our ancestral heritage to the progeny that we procreate. And because of that, we kind of tend to take it for granted.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you start studying it, we really do tend to take it for granted that, hey, I've got all this energy and I'm never going to run out. And the wonderful thing, yeah, it's true. It's like a, like
I
a,
know.
like a,
I'm
the
not any
Energizer
different.
Bunny, yes.
Yeah, I'm
And
same thing.
The problem is that we do run out.
We
And
do.
the amazing thing is that in those systems, they actually talked quite a bit about depletion. And to the point of, and Nancy's it in her clinic all the time. She and I talk about this every once in a while, that, you get to a stage that the Chinese called vacuity,
Yes.
vacuous. You're
Vacuous.
empty.
It's
Like,
so
think of a
deficient.
vacuum,
Right.
literally.
It's yeah.
And the thing is that we don't talk too much about what
Right.
causes that or what can lead to that. And
Yeah.
as a man, I think our predisposition to that idea of, the battlefield, get out there, take one for the team, we need you into the front, boys, out of the trenches, into the battle.
And that's not just athletics, Tom. I mean, men are
Yeah.
expected to perform like that in work, at high professional jobs, at labor jobs. It's like,
Yeah.
do more, do more, do more, do more, do more. You can do more. You can do more. You know,
And
we
it's
pay
a
you
very
well,
demanding.
right? Right. That's
Or
that's
sometimes
why
we don't even pay you
the
well.
oldest saying. That's why we pay you the big bucks, right?
Right, exactly.
You should be working 12, 13-hour days, and and then if you like athletics or you want to take care of yourself, you're exercising on top of that, and then you have to go home and you have a family and you have a house, and then who mows the lawn on the weekend? Try and find a landscaper these days. Not happening. So
Well, as if you can afford it.
right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
and the really interesting thing is that not, you take that, and that in itself is enough, but then what we have developed is a very highly competitive society.
Yeah.
So it's not so much enough to go out and just do a recreational, that's why that's why the term weekend warrior.
Right. That's where that came from. Yeah.
Okay, weekend warrior. It's like, I'm going out and I'm going to really get it, whether it's baseball or softball or hockey or football or whatever.
Cycling, triathlons. Yeah.
Exactly.
Running.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to push it as far as we can
Right.
push it, because that's what we're supposed to do.
Exactly.
And as men, we'll come home and we'll be exhausted.
Yeah.
And we'll get up on Monday morning and it'll be like, oh my God. But somewhere we dig deep and we learn how to dig deep and we figure, okay, it'll rectify itself.
Right. Or maybe you've been
And we're
up
like,
at night with the kids, baby,
mhm.
or your teenage son got into trouble last
It's
night,
like late,
and
or
you
worse,
had to
your
go to the
teenage daughter comes
hospital,
home
and
late.
they're in the ER because they got into a car accident. I mean, I'm laughing because it's so common, right? And
Yeah,
you know how
yeah,
you said vacuity. I wanna help people understand that term a little bit. It's like having a savings account that's at zero and credit card debt to the top, and you really don't have enough money to climb out of the credit card debt, let alone put money in the savings account. So
right.
that's what vacuity is like. It's like big trouble debt, And a lot of people think, yeah, it's all right. If I just rest or take a day off, I'll be fine. That ain't it. This is serious. That kind of vacuity is very, very serious, especially when it comes to reaching your late 30s, early 40s, and your mid 50s, and you're still on that hamster wheel, you know, then
Yeah,
that's where we start to see these patterns of vacuity, including erectile dysfunction. So that's the connection there, Tom, and
yeah,
that's a very
exactly.
serious thing, vacuity.
And what's interesting too, Nan, is that sometimes as men especially, we tend to think that our recreation should be competitive.
I
You
know,
know, we should
right.
be, and not only just a little competitive, like major competitive, and we're so yeah, it's great. I mean, it's great to get together with a bunch of friends and go play hockey, or to
Sure.
get together with a bunch of friends and go play softball or hardball or any of that.
Or get on the
You know,
Peloton and look at the leaderboard and say, I'm going to pass 5 people in the next 10 minutes. It's
yeah,
it's
exactly.
crazy. Yeah.
Exactly. We have a very competitive nature,
Yeah.
and because of that, it's like, yeah, the credit card analogy is great because okay, so I've got an X amount of a credit limit, and I keep adding a little bit, and then I pay down a little bit, but I add a little bit more, then I pay down a little bit, then I add a little bit more. Next thing I know, I'm at my limit, and I look at my income and I think, holy moly, how am I going to pay down that credit card? And costs are going up, expenses are going up, and so sometimes we start fudging on things. So we start having a diet that's not so healthy
Yeah.
because maybe it's like, okay, I'm going to do a fast food diet because that way I can save some time and I can get more done. And so we eat foods that are devitalized. We eat foods that are denatured. We eat foods that are not the best that we could be eating. So when you look at that from the point of view of these ancient traditions, they talk about that over endeavor. They talk about the fact that you can deplete that vital essence. And while there's a way to rebuild it, if you're constantly depleting it, if you're constantly it's kind of like that old saying, like, what do you mean I don't have any money in my checking account? I still have lots of checks. You know, it, but
I
what's
have all
what's
these
happening?
checks. What do you mean there's
I've
no
got all
money?
these checks. There's got to be money in there.
There's got to be
Um,
money.
it, it's like I take all these vitamins. I do all these other things. What do you mean I'm running out of energy? It's easy enough to do.
Oh,
And
God, yeah.
so, so for today, what I want to do is just plant this seed that look, in these traditions, they look at our vital energy, our essence. And now, if you look at traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about the three treasures. And the three treasures are called Jing, which is our essence. That's what we inherit from our parents. When there's that combination of ovum and semen, we have that ancestral, what they call ancestral Jing or essence. And then there is Qi, and Qi is the energy that we're getting from the air that we're breathing, from the food that we're eating, and just from the atmosphere around it. We're literally absorbing it through our bodies, and we can replenish Qi so we can have that ongoing energy. And the more healthy food you eat, the more healthy your lifestyle, you can actually do a good job replenishing that Qi. and and the concept of chi is really, it's kind of new to a lot of people. It's, people think of it as just, just energy, but it's more than just energy. It's the body's functionality on a day-to-day basis.
And it
And then
creates
we've got,
warmth, it creates heat.
it creates warmth and heat, and we're going to show that corresponds actually in the Ayurvedic terminology too. And then you have, so you've got Jing, and you've got Qi, and then you've got what's called Shen. And Shen was always one of my favorite things to talk about in doing herbal trainings for people, because Shen is the medicine of the heart. Shen is the energy of the heart, and not like just the heartbeat, but that energy that gives you a glow, that energy that makes your eyes sparkle, that you're warm and vital and vibrant. And that Shen can be depleted, as well as Qi can be depleted. And as if we keep borrowing from each of those and depleting each of those, we start then going into our reserves, which is our Jing.
Jing.
And as we deplete the Jing, then the body begins to slowly, sometimes imperceptibly, sometimes more than imperceptibly, function less and less effectively.
Yes.
And eventually we get to a point, even as men, where we look at it and go, okay, things aren't working right. And unfortunately, there's that little appendage down between, in our groin, that is probably the thing that we look at most often and go, wait a minute, it's not working the way it used to work, or it's not working the way it's supposed to work. I need to fix it. And we get a lot of people marketing to us on the internet about our potential sexual problems or our performance problems or functionality. And that's why, modern pharmaceuticals have come in with things like the little blue pill to help us get back in the game, so to speak. But the underlying problem is that we've run out. We're starting to borrow against that vital energy, that Jing, that essence, and we're running out of credit. And now, if you look at Ayurveda, the Ayurvedic, equivalent, if you will, of Jing is Ojas, and Ojas is that foundational energy. It relates with Kapha, or the water element, because that's what's so nourishing. That's, water is our ability to put on weight, to put on, mass. If it gets unbalanced, we get, overweight, we get obese. But if it's right, we have a really nice, healthy body. With the Qi, the Ayurvedic element is Tejas, and Tejas is the fire element. It relates to Pitta. And it gives us that spark, that energy to go. And then with the, what would be called Shen in traditional Chinese medicine would be called, no, I'm sorry, I goofed there. It's actually the correlative of Qi is prana, and Tejas is the the element of that fire.
Fire.
Which is
Right.
which
Qi.
is the Shen, that spark,
Oh, the
that
Shen.
heat,
Yeah.
glow. Yeah. So
Tejas is Shen, Qi is
is
prana,
prana,
and Jing
and
is Ojas.
Jing is Ojas. Yeah.
And they're
And
all
and
conceptually similar. Like Jing, there's a fluid element to it, right? It's guarded by the kidneys and the bladder in Oriental medicine, and so there's water that's related to it, and
that's the
Shen
Kapha
has
element in Ayurvedic. Yeah.
right. So there's correlations there, and all these traditions that are codified traditional herb medicine, they all have this similar concept of deep reservoir, or a well where our vital essence is stored, and we have these other places where we can generate energy, give and get energy. But when we've corrupted a lot of our energy in those other places, then we start to take it from the Jing. And that's really a problem. And we see a lot of people like that. And how do you know that your Jing is starting to pay the debt? That's when you have libido issues. And this is the same with women as well as men. But men, we see it. It's very obvious when that happens, because
much more
then you
obvious.
have erectile dysfunction. But that is absolutely related to that loss, that vacuousness, or the deficiency in the Jing, which is, a sign of true aging, deep, deep aging. So,
Well, and the other thing about it is that in order, it's just like with trying to replenish or repay all of your debt
yeah,
and get it back to the point where you're actually putting money in a savings account rather than
right,
putting money towards your debt. Um,
exactly.
it takes time,
It does.
and I think part of what I'm trying to say at the beginning here is the reason that I don't want to just go into what herbs can I take. Do you have an herb for that? Do you have an herb for that? Yeah, we do. In one sense, we
In one
do.
sense, we
But
do. Yes, we do.
this practice, this process is going to take some time because it is literally something that you have to rebuild. And that is really the case of it is it's going to take time. And we can't, as men, I know we're conditioned to think that we should be able to do something immediately. And this plays out into so many different areas. Um, so we get marketed to on the internet about, take this pill, take this combination, and it's going to fix everything. It may be true that this pill is going to help you, but the bigger question is that help really help, or is it just another depletion that's going on with what you're doing to try and get your body back in shape, back into functionality? And that really talks a lot about foundations. If we don't take care of the foundation, which is the basis of our functionality, there's no way we're going to get our functionality back the way we want. We're only going to just dig a deeper hole. So today's little talk, little discussion in the beginning, it's just an opening discussion. I just want to open the possibility that, for men's health, we can bring ourselves back a long ways. We can be extremely healthy and vital and vibrant in our older years. There's no question about it. But we need to pay attention. We need it. It's more than just thinking, okay, hey, I'm just, give me a pill, I'll go back in the game. And like Nan says to her patients, her clients, look, I can help you, but it's not going to be overnight. And
Right.
that's the whole thing. It's like you've got to rebuild. So when we go into the next session, when we go to the next episode, we're going to talk about herbs. We're going to talk about combinations of herbs, and we're going to talk about some lifestyle things that can actually help to replenish that sexual function. But what I wanted to do was lay the groundwork and remind people, like, look, this is more than just give me a pill. This is not the little blue pill. This is not the Viagra, the Cialis, the Levitra, the Sildenafil, or any of those that are just going to force the issue, because that's why they have side effects.
Yeah.
That's why they have side effects.
Yeah. They do. The list of side effects are numerous. In the very least, with what I would call heroic intervention, you'll get a stuffy nose that's chronic, and oddly enough, I have, and like Thomas said, I do have clients that come in and they have erectile dysfunction and they're being treated and they complain of a stuffy nose. They complain. And they get occasional headaches. Sometimes they have upset
Their
stomach, or
eyes
their
hurt, they get eye
stomach,
strain. Yeah.
their eyes will be bright red, and why are my eyes so red? Or they'll have chronic tinnitus, ringing in the ear. Sometimes they might even have hearing loss. Oftentimes they'll have periods of dizziness or vertigo too. And they'll think it's separate from their treatment, but it's not. So I have to remind them, I have to give them the list. Well, you are on this drug. You've been on this drug for a long period of time. But I tolerated so well in the beginning. And but this is cumulative effect. So they'll get redness of the chest and the face, and the other thing too, so you can get hearing loss, you can get a lot of eye issues. Your vision will change, it'll get worse, you can get heart palpitations, you can have a heart attack, you can get high blood pressure being on treatments like that. And then you can become colorblind, which is really odd, but that's not an uncommon side effect of a long, and these are long term, and the longer you go taking the intervention, the more of a possibility that you would have negative side effects. So I have several of my men in my practice who are being treated, and every single one of them complains of stuffy nose, sinus congestion. And they say to me, can you give me something for that? And I said, no, we have to remove something. We have to remove something in order for that to go away because it's being caused by the intervention. So that's where things get really dicey. And it's the same with testosterone in my practice. I've seen men that have been on testosterone. It says some of them have been on testosterone with a doctor. They see a doctor. The doctor's giving it to them. They take regular blood tests, but all of a sudden, ferritin levels will go up, and then they start making excess blood. And then, in order to stay on the testosterone, they have to go and they have to give blood. And then at some point, the physician says you can no longer stay on this on testosterone. We have to take you off. And then what? And then they're still in the same situation, but worse than when they were before they took it. And they come to me and they say, do you have an herb for this? And this whole conversation. So the conversation it's crucial because yes, see your doctor. Absolutely. See your doctor. And if you decide that, having heroic intervention is what you want, go right ahead. But you still, at some point, are going to have to face the music, which is the underlying original cause for the deficiency in the first place.
And the interesting thing about those traditional practices is that both TCM and Ayurveda have aspects of them that talk about doing sex differently. Becoming much more conscious about the sex, where it's not just about the ejaculatory process for the man. It's not just about having the orgasmic process and one and done and it's over. There's a lot more depth and emotional richness to the idea of intercourse and sex than just, let me show you how big I can get, or let me show you how hard I can get and how fast I can go and how, I'll take you over the top, babe. There's a lot more to that. And as we age, we can't keep pushing our bodies as men. We just can't keep, no matter what they say on the internet, no matter what they say in books, we can't just, it's not all about, hey, you're just a sex machine. There's
Wasn't there a song called Sex Machine?
Yeah, exactly. And literally, it's like there are things that we can do. There are wonderful practices. There's a wonderful woman by the name of Diana Richardson who wrote a book called Slow Sex.
Yeah.
And it talks about, this whole idea of this rush to climax, rather than this slow, leisurely, wonderful, journey together and learning to that. So, those are alternatives. Those are things that are building and healing. Those are things that are adding to the picture.
I love what Sherry Winston had to say. As people age, they often become more adept at accessing different aspects of themselves, including their complementary energy, the energy that's more about restoration versus expenditure. And because it is an energy, parasympathetic nervous system, which is a restoration energy, is an energy. It's just different. It's completely different. And the best lovers are sages. They're mature people who are able to act in alignment with their authentic self and to be in an ongoing conscious connection with themselves and with others. And I love that because that's consciousness, sure. Yeah, when you're young, a lot of fun because, everything is just full to the brim with energy. But at some point, depending upon how you've lived over time and the conscientiousness relative to that, you end up later on in your life saying, gosh, maybe I overdid it early on in life, sparing and being being judicious, that's the word I want to say, about how, you go to the well, when you go to the well, how much you go to the
often
well,
you go
and
to the well.
how often you go to the well, starts to become a better conversation for longevity. If you're in a healthy marriage, and I have had many conversations with clients over the years that are heartbroken because one or both couples have gone into vacuity in this part of their life. Whether it's the woman or the man, it can happen to either or both. And instead of pushing yourself and saying, I have to make my body be something that it's not, or do something that it can't at the time, the question you should be asking yourself is, how did I get here, and how do I
Exactly.
find the healing well inside of me? Where do I go to find healing? Not how do I take a square peg and put it in a round hole. How
Push
do I
farther and push farther and push
how do I
farther.
refill the well? How do I do that? And what do I need to do? And how do I need to approach this now, because I'm in a different place? So it's doable. It's completely doable. It's just, if you're a young person,
There
and
is
you're
an herb for that.
out there,
There is
and
an
there are
herb for
many
that.
herbs for that, and there's a way of life for that. And if you're a young person and you're thinking, that's not going to happen to me, it will.
Not for me, yeah.
And if you know that, okay, aging's inevitable, what do I have to do now as a young person to have preservation, so that it's that saying, the tortoise can finish the race sometimes better than the hare, because it took its time. And it was judicious about how it used its energy during the course of the race, right? The race being your life. So, it's definitely something to think about.
There's a great quote from, an old baseball's, massive star,
Oh, you got to say.
Mickey Mantle. So Mickey Mantle was this absolute, baseball god, and he was quoted as saying, because he got old and his health really deteriorated really badly, and
Yeah.
he was quoted as saying, you know what, if I had realized that I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. But we tend to
It's
think, I'm going
true.
to, not only do we have heroic medicine, but we have like heroic lifestyle.
We
I'm going
do.
to go out in a flash like a comet. I'm going to live hard, play hard, and then just die hard. And that's great, but guess what? When life doesn't quite go that way, and you end up finding yourself at 70 or 80, and you're still alive, you're still here, you're not leaving, and you want to have a wonderful life, it's all about what you're doing now.
Yeah.
It's all about what
It
you're
is.
doing now, with that view of, how am I going to be
Yes.
10 years from
Exactly.
now, 15 years from now, 20 years from
Tom,
now?
this is
So
such a
that's
great
that's it.
conversation. I mean, it's really fabulous, and I'm glad this is part one, because it really does help lay the groundwork of what we're going to talk about in part two, which is in 2 weeks, where we are going to go through the herbs that are both the herbs that can make some things happen in short term, and then the herbs that are actually going to encourage refilling the well, filling up that vacuity, and starting to pay off the debt of the credit cards, and get some money in the energy account, right? So definitely, we are going to be doing that in our next episode on the podcast. But what a great conversation, and thank you so much for being a leader in that conversation. It's certainly not the most common conversation that's out there relative to men and men's health, especially their sexual health. But I think it's authentic, and I really feel that when it comes to reality, that's what I see in my practice. That's what I see come in. Like men really sort of in a, what happened? Why did this happen? I'm only 46. Why did this happen? I'm 48. How can it be that this is gone? What's going on here?
I didn't expect this to happen until I was really old, like
80,
65.
85, right.
Well, if you're young and you look, because I can remember being 20 and looking at 60-year-olds and thinking, oh my God, they're ancient.
Yeah, they're
You know,
wrinkly.
I know. Now I look at, I'm 73, and I look at 60-year-olds and I think, God, they look so good.
Oh my gosh. Oh
Yeah,
goodness.
so, but I think it's time. There it is. That's
Yeah,
the music that says we've got some favorite things to talk
we
about.
definitely do. I love this part, our favorite things. We really go into our herbs and our nutraceuticals that we love that are our standbys. Yeah, pretty great. So,
So what'd you bring to the table, man?
yeah, um, I'm gonna definitely share the screen for those of you who are watching the vodcast. Okay.
So what do you got for us, Nan? You got something? I know your favorite things always end up being things that are like my favorite things too. So
Yeah.
what are we talking about today?
Well, we are talking about D-Ribose, or at least I am, and you are talking about nettle. No, yeah,
I
excuse me.
talked about Nettles.
You talked about nettle.
I'm talking about.
I scratch that. Okay, I
You are.
am sharing one of my favorite things is D-Ribose, and D-Ribose is a it is sugar. It's a type of sugar. It's a 5-carbon sugar. It's a monosaccharide, so better for you than other types of sugars. It's generally known as a sugar that is a healing sugar. It is part of your body's primary energy carrying molecule, ATP. So during strenuous exercise, large amounts of ATP can be depleted from your heart and your skeletal muscle, and especially if it's very strenuous exercise with a lot of heat, you'll burn through these monosaccharides, the D-ribose form of monosaccharides, really quickly. So supplementation with D-ribose may enhance the recovery of ATP, your energy stores, to improve your just general life, daily energy, and especially your level of fitness. So I have found it to be exceedingly helpful with aging athletes. I've also found it to be very, very helpful with people who have complaints of chronic fatigue. They're fatigued every day and they haven't found the source yet, and they're in a process of doing a battery of tests. But if they take the D-ribose, they can have some level of functionality during the day. May not necessarily be the final fix, but it's certainly helpful. Or it's helpful on those days where you feel a little bit tired and you're trying to help your body get a move on, to get some exercise that would help you fill up the tank. There's a lot of promising research in exploring the use of D-ribose for muscle fatigue that results from just daily activities of living or strenuous exercise. D-ribose is a building block of both RNA and DNA, so it's a part of our genetic material. D-ribose plays a vital role in both heart and skeletal muscle metabolism. So again, everything is about synthesizing ATP. It's one of our great energy molecules, and research indicates that if you take supplemental ribose, it promotes quicker replenishment of your ATP, and especially in the cardiac muscle. So for those of you who are weekend warriors, this is a really good thing to take. There's no known negative side effect to it. It's a monosaccharide. And it's so low level, a lot of people forget about ribose. They think, oh, those crazy fitness people, they take that, or those bodybuilders take it. But believe it or not, it's easy to take. It tastes really good. You can take it as a little wafer. The common recommended servings prior to exercise is about 2 to 3 grams, and after exercise is anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 grams for recovery.
Yeah, depending on
And
how hard
it's
you've worked out. Yeah.
right, and that on really, really, really hot days, there's potassium supplements, which I highly recommend for people who are outside and they're sweating and they sweat profusely and they have extended hours of play, or if they're exercising. And then the other thing, and really this is where D-Ribose gets forgotten, or it's marginalized, but it's really easy to just take a wafer or two during the day if you have those energy lags in the afternoon, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you have one of those dips in your energy, just having a wafer of D-Mannose is not going to harm you in any way, and it certainly might give you a little natural boost of energy. It's not a stimulant. It really just helps your body make more ATP. So really simple, really excellent supplement that I love, and I use it. It's efficient for me. There's been some good clinical trials. One of my favorite was published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine in 2006, which is a while ago, but it still stands. It was entitled The Use of D-Ribose in Chronic Fatigue Syndrome and Fibromyalgia. It was a pilot study, and there were 41 patients. But the upshot of the clinical trial was that D-Ribose significantly reduced clinical symptoms in patients suffering from both fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's really simple, it's not expensive, it's really safe, you can take it for long periods of time, and it's not just for bodybuilders. It's for everyone who's trying to make sure that they don't empty the tank in their energy. So that's my favorite thing.
And
D-Ribose.
Nan, to add to that, which I
Sure.
love D-Ribose, I take it regularly. A lot of times, we tend to have these, adrenal moments. If you read books about adrenal fatigue and so on, they talk to you about the 10, 2, and 4 time frames where your body seems to be like, oh my God, I'm running out of energy. And that's where a lot of people tend to go, okay, coffee break. And that's the way work is set up. I mean, a lot of work, the coffee breaks at work were all set up around 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then just before you're ready to go home, you need that extra little boost. And a lot of times we tend to take things that are stimulants. And, so it's kind of the same idea that we've been talking about do you have a pill for that? Do you have an herb for that? The idea we're looking for a stimulant. Well, no, it's let's take something that actually gives us back the energy rather than forcing us to dig deeper and pull out even more energy from our reserves. And D-Ribose for me is something that experientially I can feel it when I take it. It's
Yeah,
something that
absolutely.
restores my body like, okay, I can go again.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That's a great point.
and my favorite herb is, well, you can't do anything about it other than you say it's horny goat weed, Epimedium, one of my favorite herbs, and I love it for a lot of different reasons. Traditionally, in Chinese and Japanese traditional medicines, Korean as well, it was used for the kidneys, the health of the kidneys. It was used for joint health. It was used to support the liver and liver function. It was used especially for pain and stiffness in the back and in the knees. But it was also used as an aphrodisiac because, way back in antiquity, it was said that there was a goat herder who noticed that when his goats ate this particular plant, they became very lusty, and there were a lot of couplings and a lot of new kids being born and everything because it made the goats lusty. So, whether you call it horny goat or lusty goat, this is what the traditional name meant. Yin Yang Huo meant lusty goat weed, and it has that aphrodisiac effect. One of the things that we know about it is that it does increase sexual desire. It increases sperm production. It stimulates the sensory nerves, especially around the genitals, and it can be effective for both men and for women. And we know that in animal studies, it significantly increased testosterone. Now, human studies don't quite play out that completely that way, but it's kind of an interesting herb because, one of the traditional uses was for kidney health. And when they did some human clinical trials, they did a human clinical trial on men who had kidney diseases, a specific type of a kidney disease. And they were giving them the Epimedium, and part of the manifestation of that kidney disease was almost, total lack of sexual function. It just went away. And what they found was when they gave these men it was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. 60% of the subjects who were getting the horny goat weed, the Epimedium, experienced increased sexual enhancement, increased sexual pleasure and satisfaction, whereas the group that was getting the placebo, none of them experienced any increase whatsoever. And not only that, but there was another study that was done where they found they were combining the Epimedium with another group of herbs, and they found that they were giving it to men, telling them, okay, take this an hour before sexual activity, and they found that about 2/3 of those men had firmer, stronger erectile function. They had stronger erections because of the use of the Epimedium. So it definitely does work. And, I know several herbal practitioners who have told me, yeah, for a lot of my male patients, just the inclusion of horny goat weed does amazing things. Now, here's the really interesting corollary to that. When pharmaceutical scientists were studying, horny goat weed, they were looking at it initially as a circulatory herb for heart health and for circulation, because they had discovered that it has an effect on what's called PDE5, which is it's a compound in the body that I think it's phosphodiesterase 5, that causes nitric oxide to quit being released in the vasculature. And when nitric oxide is released in the vasculature, it relaxes the tone of the veins and the arteries and allows greater volume of blood to move through those. And that's absolutely essential in the men's penises to cause engorgement and, an erection.
Which is the opposite of what you think, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Because you have to relax
Exactly.
the vessels in order to engorge. So the weird thing is if you're stressed, your blood flow is not going to be going to your extremities.
Yeah,
If you're
it's very
stressed, it constricts the vasculature. So there you go. You got to chill out.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that they found that the Epimedium, as they were doing their studies, and they realized, hey, wait a minute, this actually enhances erectile function. They started looking at it and realizing, okay, we could take this and synthesize this, and
Yes.
voila, you've got Viagra, you've got Cialis, you've got Levitra, because they were studying plant medicine. So it does work. It does absolutely work, but
It does, yeah.
like we were saying before, it does have a tendency to push. As you
Yeah.
can imagine, it's like all of a sudden the goats got very lusty. There were more couplings. And so I find it really interesting because if you go out onto the websites like WebMed and MD or RX listings and so on, and they give you the side effects, they tell you, you have to be really careful. Studies are showing us, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, you can have dizziness, you can have tinnitus, you can have all kinds of side effects from taking too much of this herb or taking it for too long. And if you
Right.
take it in very large doses, you can actually
Right.
have respiratory distress to the point of literally you can stop breathing and die.
And
So
that sounds very similar to the negative side
side
effects
effects
of
of
long-term
the
use
little pill.
of the little pills, the little blue pills, which is very interesting. Again, when you do too much of one thing in the body, you end up having to pay.
Exactly.
Everything in moderation and everything in balance.
And so the message here, literally, because I know normally when you think of my favorite things or one of my favorite herbs, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to just take this herb all the time and it's great. No,
No.
this is an herb that does work, but it's an herb that needs to be taken in a balanced way. Normally, it's never given just by itself.
That's right. It's usually given in
It's
formula.
always combined because those combinations then create the balance. And the balance is what we're looking for. We're really looking if I have a favorite thing, it's a favorite thing because it helps bring more balance back into my life. And believe me, I can go off on a tangent really easily, and bringing myself back into that center, back into balance is really what it's all about. And so Epimedium is something, horny goatweed is something that can really work well for men with that erectile dysfunction. But again, my suggestion is find an herbalist who knows what they're doing. Find an herbalist who, and you can go to the American Herbalist Guild, the ahg.org, and they can help you find a qualified herbalist wherever you live. And find an herbalist who knows how to use these so that they can keep track of it for you. Because this idea of just, I'm just going to treat myself, I'm going to go get horny goatweed and I'm going to take a whole bunch of it. And by the way, 1,800 milligrams per day, that's a fairly large amount.
That's too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah,
So
or a
you wanna stay around
naturopath,
1,000.
find someone who's skilled at using herbs. Some of the naturopaths are also fine herbalists too. So
Absolutely. And just understand that, yes, it is going to work, but like anything else, you can have too much of a good thing.
Definitely.
So we're going to talk about it a little bit more when we come in for the next session.
Yeah, next episode we'll really cover the herbs. So thanks, Tom. And all right, everybody, we want to thank you so much for attending our podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, our vodcast.
Yeah.
And
let us know what you think.
Please give us some feedback. We're new at this. We're doing our best, but we're happy to learn and grow and change. So give us some ideas, if you will.
Tell your friends.
And
post.
Absolutely. And tune in again in a couple of weeks, if you will, and hear the rest of the story, part 2 of men's sexual health. And we'll have this all done and wrapped up before Father's Day. Absolutely, for sure.
What a twinkie dink. Okay.
Right. So take good care of yourself, and we will see you again
All right.
very soon.
Bye now.
Ta-ta for now. Okay, everyone. Until next time, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom.
We'll have more great topics and guests in the very near future. So join us right here in 2 weeks as the Supplement Super Sleuth
and the Herbal Storyteller take another deep dive into the fascinating world of the natural products industry.
See you later.